I'm going to talk about my personal experience with the N20 timing chain and oil pump chain. For reference, the date is June 2019. Right now, I'm in the middle of replacing my timing chain and oil pump drive chain. I'm not a professional mechanic. What I'm talking about here today is strictly anecdotal. This is not a DIY walkthrough. I just want to talk about some things I found interesting while working on my 228i. This is a big job. It's kind of complicated, and you have to work on multiple vehicle systems: the suspension, the fuel, electrical, the engine. I'm going to intentionally skip over a lot of the work that I've done. My reasoning is if you are competent enough to tackle this job, the information that I do give you will likely answer your major questions. If you're not competent enough to do this work, you won't gain any useful knowledge from watching me remove every last fastener and component from the car. My car is a 2014 228i with the N20 engine. It is a rear-wheel drive model with a manual transmission. Car has about 50,000 kilometers on it, which is about 30,000 miles. I can't speak for all-wheel drive models because there are extra components at the front of the engine that you'll have to deal with, like the front drive shafts and the front differential. The build date on this car is June 2014. My car does fall in the 7-year, 70,000 mile extended timing chain and oil chain warranty. In Canada, that's 7 years and 112,000 kilometers. The specific range for 228Is that are affected, it falls between July 2013 and February 2015. So if your vehicle was built in that time range, you're affected by you'll have the parts that are affected by the timing chain issue. The extended warranty for other N20 engines, other BMWs with N20 engines, you could find that information online or call BMW and ask them. So my car falls within the range of vehicles, so I decided to do this work myself as a preventative measure as opposed to waiting for an issue to arise. The peace of mind that I would get by having the updated parts is worth the money, time, and effort for me to do this job. Circumstances gave me a window to stop driving the car and to do the work myself. I noticed a whining noise developing when the engine is revved above 3,000 RPM. This can only be heard in the engine bay with the car parked. I don't hear it at all while I'm driving. Supposedly, the whining noise is generated by the oil pump drive chain. It's generated by the oil pump drive train, which is at the front of the engine. The wear on the sprockets is what causes the noise. The whining noise on my engine isn't that bad. I've seen some videos where the whining noise is quite high-pitched and quite loud. It sounds like a table saw cutting wood. In terms of, so far I'm pretty much disassembled and removed all the old parts, and I'm ready to put the new parts in. So here on the table in the center here, this is the old timing chain. It looks like it's in pretty good condition. It's this chain here that's all bunched up. The car only has about 50,000 kilometers, so it still looks pretty good. I've compared this to the new timing chain that I have. I don't have it here on the table, but they look pretty similar. No noticeable differences. BMW updated the timing chain part number in January of 2015, so the chains are different somehow. The timing chain guides are in good condition. You can see that here. The plastic it's not brittle, there are no cracks. When the plastic is new, it's a lighter green color, and after it's used in the engine, the oils will stain the plastic brown. These guides are only lightly stained because the engine has so few miles on it. And you could see the new timing chain guide here. For the oil pump drive chains, the chain and the guides, they look like to be in pretty good condition as well. You can look closely at the oil pump chain. The chain links are made of thin plates stacked together. On the new chain, the number of plates is reduced by doubling the thickness of the interior plates. So this is the new chain here. The new chain was updated in March of 2015. This date coincides with the extended warranty date range ending in February 2015. It looks like the extended warranty is set to cover all the cars with the old style multi-plate oil pump chain, and as well as the older style timing chain. They updated the oil pump chain again in January of 2016, and again in well, yeah, they updated in 2016. Again, the guides on the old parts are stained by oil. They would have started off the same color as this new part here. In terms of the work I did so far, the internet says this job requires 10 hours of work to complete by a BMW technician. The job mainly consists of removing the valve cover, lowering the front subframe, removing the oil pan, replacing the timing chain and oil pump drive chain, and then reassembling. I anticipated this job would take about 40 hours to complete. I work pretty slowly, and so far I'm already at 40 hours, and that's before I started to reassemble the car. I only work on the car during weekends, and my car has been off the road for about a month. This is my fourth weekend working on it. I anticipate having to work on the car for another 20 hours. The biggest question that I had before I started doing the work was the oil pan. So the oil pan needs to be removed. And I wasn't sure if the oil pan could be removed without lowering the subframe. Now I can tell you now that you do have to lower the subframe in order to remove the oil pan bolts and to remove the pan from the engine. I tried to lift the engine, the front of the engine, with an engine hoist, but there was not enough room to get the oil pan out. I likely would have saved a few hours if I went directly to lowering the subframe to begin with. 2 of the oil pan bolts have thread sealer on them to keep the oil from leaking out. On my car, they go back. I've got an image of this. So this is a photo of the oil pan looking up from below. This side here is the flywheel, and you can see the 2 bolts with the thread sealer on them go at the flywheel side, on the flywheel side of the engine there. When you're taking off the oil pan, make sure you check each bolt as you remove them to make sure to be able to make note of any differences they may have. In terms of tools, I had to order a whole bunch of specialty tools online. This cost about $1,000 Canadian. I had to get a timing chain tool, CTA 7675, an oil pump drive chain tool, CTA 7676. The supplied pin that you see in the image there is used to hold back the chain tensioner. It's the wrong size, but I was able to substitute it with a small Allen key instead. The front oil seal is this tool here, CTA 2241. And I had to get a flywheel locking tool for manual transmission. It's different if you have an automatic. For this tool, I also had to buy two M6 50mm long bolts with nuts and washers to be able to mount the tool to the transmission. To lift up the engine or to support the engine, if you're using an engine support bar, I had to get a tow hook, part number 72157070643. That's that tow hook here. As far as I can tell, it's a tow hook used on E46 3 Series. It has a narrow body that you can see here. A hook from a E90 3 Series can be used, but the diameter of the body is much larger and it needs to be modified in order for it to not interfere with other components in the engine. The tow hook that's in the trunk of my 2 Series didn't fit, and I'm going to assume that for most N20 equipped BMWs, the supplied tow hook with the car won't fit. I had to get this tow hook from the dealer. In terms of other tools, let's see. I needed a 22mm socket. 22mm socket. 24mm socket. This is a 27mm socket. As well as this is another 22mm socket, but this one is a 3/4 inch drive. So that 3/4 inch drive 22mm socket, I used that with a 4-foot long 3/4 inch drive breaker bar. That's the best way I could say to remove the crankshaft bolt. For Allen keys and hex keys, short 3/8 drives hex keys or Allen keys would be sufficient. 8mm and 10mm Torx bits. I had to use T30, T40, T45 in 3/8 drive, both short and long. The long ones come in handy for fasteners that are a little bit obscured. I also needed a short T60 3/8 drive socket. That one you use to remove the oil pump drive chain. And the T60 is pretty big. They're usually not included in most kits. I had to get a mini bit ratchet. There's this guy here, and it drives 1/4 inch bits. Specifically, I had to use T40 and T45 in a few typed spaces. External torques, I have some external torques here. External torques from E8 up to E18. My kit has an E11. I use that to disconnect the steering column from the steering rack. I mentioned the E11 because I found that at all the big box stores near my house, the E-Torx kits, they didn't come with an E11 except for one kit that I found. So sourcing an E11 may not be very easy if you're trying to buy locally. You may have to order it online. I found that having E8 bits or sockets smaller than, sorry, let me say that again. I found that having E8 and smaller sockets in 1/4 inch drives was helpful because those smaller bolts, removing the bolts from the oil pan, there's a few bolts that are tricky to get to. In terms of, so the parts, these aren't all the parts that I bought. I have a lot of parts that in my closet. Parts total cost me about $1,700 Canadian. I ordered all the parts from a BMW dealer. I live in Canada, and while I can order from American online parts dealers, the Canadian US exchange rate pretty much cancels out any savings I would get from ordering them online. To do the work, I used some manuals that I found online, supplemented it with a Haynes manual for the 3 Series that also covers the N20 engines. So in total, this job cost me about $3,000 Canadian to do in parts and tools. I'm not done yet, and by the time I am done, it will probably have taken me 60 hours in labor, and by that time the car wouldn't have been driven for about 6 weeks. This is a job that you can do at home if you're competent enough and have all the tools to do it.